A man's furious shouting shook the restaurant, until a quiet voice from a corner booth told him to try shouting again. The whole room went still, even Iris, who'd spent years enduring humiliation in silence. She had no idea who the stranger was, or why his calm warning made the bully step back. But by the end of the night, that single moment would shift her life in a way she never saw coming. The man's fist slammed against the table. Iris flinched, nearly dropping the plate she was clearing from the booth next to his. Her heart jumped into her throat, but she kept moving, kept her head down, pretended she hadn't noticed. That was the trick. Stay invisible. Don't react. Don't give them a reason to focus on you. I said I wanted it medium rare. His voice boomed across the restaurant. Are you deaf? Or just stupid? Iris's hands froze. The plate wobbled in her grip. She wasn't his server, Marcus was, but Marcus had already disappeared into the kitchen, probably hiding from this exact moment. She could feel the other diners watching. Waiting. Some with sympathy. Most with that uncomfortable look people got when they witnessed someone else's humiliation and were just grateful it wasn't happening to them. Sir, I'll get your server right away, Iris said quietly, setting the plate down carefully. Her voice came out steady even though her insides were twisting. I'm sure we can fix it? He stood up now, all 6 feet of him, red-faced and furious. You people have already wasted 20 minutes of my time. Do you know what my time is worth? Do you? She didn't answer. There was no right answer to questions like that. I want to speak to the manager. Now. He jabbed his finger toward her face. Close enough that she could smell the bourbon on his breath. And I'm not paying for this garbage. In fact, you should be paying me for the insult. Iris's stomach dropped. If he complained to Mr. Davies, if he refused to pay, that would come out of someone's wages? Probably hers, even though she hadn't served him. That's how it worked here. The customer was always right, and someone always had to pay when they were wrong. I'll get him, she said, already backing away. Yeah, you do that. Run along. He waved his hand dismissively, like shooing away a fly. God, the incompetence in this place. You'd think they'd hire people with at least half a brain. The words hit her like a slap. Iris turned away fast, blinking hard, refusing to let the tears come. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She'd cry later, in her car, in the 3 minutes she had before she had to pick up Lily from the after-school program. She'd cry where no one could see. She pushed through the kitchen doors, the sounds of sizzling pans and shouted orders washing over her. Marcus was there, hiding behind the prep station, looking guilty and relieved all at once. He wants the manager, Iris said flatly. I know. I'm sorry. He's been awful since he sat down. Marcus rubbed his face. Davies is going to kill me. Where is he? In his office. On a call. Marcus looked at her with something like pity. Maybe wait until... He's screaming out there. Half the restaurant can hear him. Iris didn't have time for this. Didn't have the energy. I'll tell Davies. You go deal with the table. She walked toward the back office, each step feeling heavier than the last. Through the small window in the door, she could see Mr. Davies leaning back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something. Having a good day. About to have it ruined. She knocked. Waited. Knocked again. He looked up, annoyed, and waved her in. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation. Hold on, he said into the phone. Then to her, hand over the receiver. What situation? Table 12. The customer is very upset about his steak. He's demanding to speak with you and says he won't pay. Davies's expression darkened. Is this Marcus's table? Yes, but nothing. Tell Marcus to handle it. That's his job. He started to turn back to his call. He's shouting, Mr. Davies. Other customers are uncomfortable. He stared at her for a long moment. Then sighed, heavy and irritated, like she just asked him to solve world hunger. Fine. I'll be out in 5 minutes. Tell the customer we'll comp his meal and give him a gift certificate. And tell Marcus this is coming out of his check. Iris's chest tightened. Sir, that's not really fair. The steak. I don't remember asking for your opinion, Iris. His voice went cold. You want to keep having opinions about how I run my restaurant? Or do you want to keep your job? The question hung in the air between them. Not really a question at all. I'll let them know, she whispered. She walked back out into the dining room, her body moving on autopilot. The angry man was still at his table, arms crossed, making sure everyone knew he was wronged and waiting. She could feel the tension rolling off him from across the room. The manager will be right out, she said, stopping a safe distance away. And we'd like to offer you a complimentary meal tonight, along with... Try shouting again. The voice came from the booth directly behind the angry customer. A man Iris hadn't really noticed before. He'd been sitting quietly, hadn't ordered much, seemed lost in his own thoughts. But now he was looking straight at the angry customer, his expression completely neutral. The dining room went still. What did you say to me? The angry man turned, looking for the source of the interruption. I said try shouting again. The man in the booth didn't stand up, didn't raise his voice. Just sat there, coffee cup in hand, watching. At her. At anyone. I want to see if you can do it one more time. Iris's breath caught. No one ever did this. No one ever stepped in. The angry customer's face went from red to purple. Are you kidding me right now? This is none of your business, buddy. You made it everyone's business when you started screaming. The man took a sip of his coffee. Unhurried. So go ahead. Show us all how tough you are. Shout at the waitress again. Make yourself feel big. Who the hell do you think you are? Someone who's tired of watching men like you terrorize people who can't fight back. He set his cup down gently. So either sit down and wait quietly for your free meal, or keep going. Your choice. The angry customer looked around, suddenly aware of all the eyes on him. Not sympathetic anymore. Judging. Iris could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The realization that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the victim in this story. This is insane, he muttered. But he sat down. Heavily. Angrily. But he sat. The man in the booth caught Iris's eye. Just for a second. Something passed between them, not quite a smile, not quite anything she could name. Just acknowledgement. She nodded, barely, not trusting her voice. And then Mr. Davies came out of his office, plastering on his customer service smile, ready to smooth everything over and make the problem disappear the way he always did. But something had shifted. Iris could feel it in her chest, in the way her hands had stopped shaking. Someone had seen her. Really seen her. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel quite so invisible. The rest of the lunch shift passed in a blur. Iris kept moving between tables, refilling water glasses, delivering plates, clearing dishes. But her mind was somewhere else. Stuck on that moment. On the stranger's voice cutting through the noise like a shield she hadn't asked for but desperately needed. She kept glancing at his booth, but he'd gone back to his coffee and his phone, seemingly uninterested in the chaos he'd created. The angry customer ate his free steak in silence and left without another word. No tip for Marcus. No apology. Just gone, like his outburst had never happened. By 2:30, the lunch rush had finally died down. Iris was wiping down table 6 when she noticed the man from the booth standing near the register. He was talking to Mr. Davies. Her stomach clenched. Was he complaining? Had she done something wrong after all? Davies was nodding, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. She'd seen her boss angry, dismissive, irritated. But genuine laughter? That was rare. The man handed Davies a business card. They shook hands. And then the stranger walked toward the door. He paused when he passed Iris's table. You handled that well, he said quietly. Better than he deserved. She looked up, not sure what to say. Thank you felt too small. I'm used to it, came out instead, and she immediately wished she could take it back. It sounded so defeated. So broken. Something flickered across his face. You shouldn't have to be. And then he was gone, the door chiming softly behind him. Iris stood there, cloth in hand, staring at the space where he'd been. Her chest felt tight. She didn't even know his name. Iris. Mr. Davies's voice snapped her back to reality. He was standing by the register, holding the business card, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Come here. Her heart sank. Here it comes. Whatever price there was to pay for that scene, she was about to pay it. She walked over slowly, preparing herself. Yes, sir. Davies held up the card. Do you know who that was? She shook her head. That was Julian Hawthorne. He said the name like it should mean something. When Iris just stared blankly, he continued, Hawthorne Industries. He owns half the commercial real estate in this city, including this building. The words took a moment to sink in. He owns this building? He owns this building. And about 40 others. Davies was studying her face now. He also just told me that if I ever let another customer speak to my staff the way that man spoke to you today, he'll triple our rent when the lease is up next year. Iris's mouth went dry. What? He said he's been coming here for months. Sitting in that same booth. Watching. And he's tired of seeing good people treated like dirt. Davies rubbed his jaw, looking uncomfortable. He also suggested that maybe I should consider how I speak to my staff. The implication hung heavy in the air. Iris remembered the conversation in the office. Davies telling her to keep her opinions to herself. Threatening her job. I'm not going to lie to you, Iris. That wasn't a suggestion. That was a warning. Davies folded the card and slipped it into his pocket. So things are going to change around here. Starting now. She didn't know what to say. Didn't trust herself to speak. You're a good worker, Davies continued. You show up. You don't complain. And I've taken advantage of that. He looked away, clearly uncomfortable with the admission. Your shift today ends at 3. But I'm paying you until 5. Go home early. Spend time with your daughter. Iris felt her eyes burning. Mr. Davies. And starting next week, you're getting a raise. $2 more per hour. You've earned it. He cleared his throat. Now go clock out before I change my mind. She didn't need to be told twice. Her hands shook as she untied her apron, as she grabbed her purse from the back room, as she walked out into the autumn afternoon. The sunlight felt different. Brighter. Or maybe she was just noticing it for the first time in months. She sat in her car for a full 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. A stranger had stood up for her. Had seen her struggling and had actually done something about it. Not just empty words or sympathetic looks. Real action. Real change. The tears came then. Hot and fast and overwhelming. She let them fall, let herself feel all of it. The relief. The gratitude. The strange, fragile hope that maybe things could be different. That maybe she wasn't as powerless as she'd felt. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. She wiped her eyes and checked it. Just a reminder about the glasses appointment tomorrow. The glasses. The reason she'd been working herself into the ground. Iris took a shaky breath and started the car. She had 2 extra hours now. 2 hours she hadn't expected. She could pick up Lily early. Maybe stop for ice cream. Maybe just sit with her daughter and listen to her talk about her day without checking the clock every 5 minutes, calculating how much time she had before the next shift. The drive to the school took 15 minutes. Iris parked in the pickup zone and texted Lily that she was outside. While she waited, her mind drifted back to Julian Hawthorne. She'd heard the name before, vaguely, in the way you hear about wealthy people who exist in a different world than yours. But she'd never imagined someone like that sitting in a diner booth, drinking coffee, watching her struggle and deciding to do something about it. Lily burst through the school doors, backpack bouncing, her face lighting up when she saw the car. Mom? You're early. I know. Get in, sweetheart. Lily climbed into the back seat, buckling herself in. Did something happen? Are you okay? Even at 9 years old, her daughter could read her too well. Iris caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. Something good happened. For once. What? I'll tell you over ice cream. Lily's whole face transformed. Really? But you said we have to save money for my glasses. We do. But today we can have ice cream too. Iris pulled out of the parking lot, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Today we can have both. They went to the little ice cream place on Maple Street, the one with the striped awning and the big scoops. Lily ordered chocolate chip cookie dough. Iris got vanilla, simple and sweet. They sat at one of the small tables outside watching people walk by, and for a little while, everything felt normal. Better than normal. So what happened? Lily asked between bites. You seem different. Iris wasn't sure how to explain it. How to put into words what it meant to be seen. To be valued. Someone stood up for me today, she said finally. At work. When someone was being mean. Lily's eyes got wide. Like a superhero? Iris smiled. Kind of like that. What did they do? They just told the mean person to stop. And they listened. She stirred her ice cream, watching it soften. And then they talked to my boss. And now things are going to be better. Are you going to thank them? The question was so simple. So obvious. And Iris realized she hadn't even thought about it. How could she thank him? She didn't have his number. Didn't know where he worked beyond the vague knowledge that he owned buildings. He was probably back in some penthouse office right now, already forgetting the whole thing. I don't know how to find them, Iris said. Lily shrugged. You could leave a note. At the restaurant. In case they come back. Out of the mouths of children. That's actually a really good idea. They finished their ice cream as the sun moved lower in the sky. Iris drove them home to their small apartment on the north side of town. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a heater that rattled in the winter. But it was theirs. Warm enough. That night, after Lily was asleep, Iris sat at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pen. She started writing 3 times. Threw away the first 2 attempts. The words felt too big, too emotional, too much. Finally, she wrote something simple. Mr. Hawthorne, thank you for what you did today. You didn't have to, but you did. It meant more than you know. I hope this finds you. Iris. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her purse. Tomorrow she'd give it to Mr. Davies and ask him to pass it along. It wasn't much, but it was something. A bridge across the gap between her world and his. She turned off the kitchen light and stood in the darkness for a moment, looking out the window at the city lights stretching into the distance. Somewhere out there, Julian Hawthorne was living his life. Probably didn't give her another thought. And that was okay. He'd already given her something she hadn't had in a long time. He'd given her proof that someone cared. That her pain mattered. That she wasn't invisible after all. Iris went to bed that night and slept better than she had in months. And when her alarm went off at 5:30 the next morning, for the first time in forever, she didn't feel like the weight of the world was crushing her before her feet even hit the floor.
She folded the note carefully and tucked it into her purse. The paper felt heavier than it should, weighted with words she hoped would somehow reach him. Tomorrow she'd give it to Mr. Davies. Tonight, she'd let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, Julian Hawthorne would read it and know that what he'd done mattered. The next morning came too quickly. Iris's alarm blared at 5:30, pulling her from a dream she couldn't quite remember. She got Lily ready for school, packed her lunch, kissed her goodbye at the bus stop. The routine was so automatic she could do it half asleep. But today felt different. The note in her purse felt like a secret, like a promise waiting to be kept. She arrived at the restaurant at 6:45 for the breakfast shift. Mr. Davies was already there, setting up the register, looking tired but less irritable than usual. When he saw her, he nodded. Just a small acknowledgement, but it was more than she usually got. "Morning," she said, tying her apron. "Morning, Iris." He hesitated, then added, "About yesterday. I meant what I said. About the raise. It starts with next week's paycheck." She hadn't been sure if he'd remember. If the conversation had been real, or just something she'd imagined in her desperation. "Thank you, Mr. Davies. That means a lot." He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just keep doing what you're doing." Iris took a breath. Now or never. She pulled the folded note from her purse. "Could you give this to Mr. Hawthorne?" If you see him again. Davies looked at the note, then at her. Something shifted in his expression. He's here now. Been here since we opened. Same booth. Her heart stuttered. What? Table 15. He ordered coffee and toast. Been sitting there reading the paper like he's got nowhere else to be. Davies took the note from her hand. You want me to give this to him, or you want to do it yourself? The question hung in the air. Iris felt her palms go damp. She'd written the note thinking she'd never have to face him, that it would be passed along through Davies, clean and distant and safe. But now he was here, right now, sitting in that same booth where he'd defended her yesterday. I'll do it, she heard herself say. Davies handed the note back. Take your time. She walked across the empty dining room, her footsteps too loud on the tile floor. Morning light streamed through the windows, catching dust particles in the air. Julian sat with his back to her, newspapers spread across the table, coffee cups steaming beside him. He looked so normal, so ordinary, not like someone who owned half the city. Mr. Hawthorne? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. He looked up. For a moment, he seemed confused, like he couldn't place her outside the context of yesterday's chaos. Then recognition sparked in his eyes. Iris, good morning. I'm sorry to bother you. She held out the folded note, her hand trembling slightly. I wanted to thank you for what you did yesterday. You didn't have to, but you did, and it changed things. For me. He took the note, but didn't open it. Just held it, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You don't need to thank me. I do, though, because people don't usually. She trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. Don't usually care. Don't usually notice. Don't usually think people like me matter. Julian set the note down gently on the table. Can you sit? Just for a minute. She glanced back at Davies. He was watching, but made no move to stop her. The breakfast rush hadn't started yet. The restaurant was still quiet. She slid into the booth across from Julian, feeling strange, sitting in a customer's seat instead of serving. I'm going to tell you something, Julian said, folding his hands on the table. And I need you to really hear it. Iris nodded, not trusting her voice. 20 years ago, I was where you are, working 2 jobs, barely making rent, raising a kid on my own. He paused, letting that sink in. My daughter was 6. Her mother had left us, and I was waiting tables at a place not much different from this one. Iris's eyes widened. She hadn't expected that, hadn't imagined his life as anything but easy and privileged. One night, a customer threw a drink in my face, said I'd gotten his order wrong. I hadn't, but that didn't matter. Julian's jaw tightened at the memory. My manager told me to apologize, to comp the meal, to let this man humiliate me because the customer is always right. What did you do? I apologized. I comped the meal. I went home and cried in my car before I picked up my daughter from a babysitter. He looked out the window, somewhere far away. And I promised myself that if I ever had any power, any money, any influence at all, I'd never let that happen to someone else. Not if I could stop it. The words settled over Iris like a blanket, heavy and warm and real. I built my business from nothing, Julian continued. Took 15 years of 90-hour weeks and sacrifices and missed soccer games and pasta for dinner 6 nights a week. But I built it, and now I have more money than I know what to do with. He met her eyes. But that doesn't mean I've forgotten. It doesn't mean I don't see people like you, still fighting the same fight I fought. Iris felt tears prickling behind her eyes. Your daughter, is she? She's 26 now. Doctor, smarter than I'll ever be. Pride softened his features. She's the reason I did all of it. Every hour, every sacrifice. Just like you're doing for yours. Lily, she's 9. That's a good age. Still thinks her mom can fix anything. Julian smiled. Hold on to that as long as you can. They sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable. Understanding. 2 people who'd walked the same hard road, just at different times. I didn't come here to offer you a job, Julian said finally. Or money. Or anything that would make you feel like you owe me something. Then why did you come back? To make sure Davies kept his word. To make sure you're okay. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Set it on the table between them. But I want you to have this. Not now. Not for today, but for the future. If you ever need help, real help, a reference, advice, someone to call when things get impossible, you use that number. Iris picked up the card. It was simple. Heavy cardstock. His name. A phone number. An email address. Nothing flashy, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I can't promise I'll always answer right away, Julian said. But I will answer. That's my personal line. Only about 20 people have it. Now you're one of them. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why me? Because I see you, he said simply. Because 20 years ago, I needed someone to see me, and no one did. And I don't want that to be your story. A tear slipped down Iris's cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just promise me something. What? Don't let people make you small. Don't let them convince you that you're worth less because you're struggling. You're doing one of the hardest jobs in the world. Raising a kid alone, keeping your head above water, showing up every day even when it's brutal. His voice was fierce now. That takes more strength than anything I've ever done in a boardroom. Iris clutched the card, her fingers white around the edges. Thank you for seeing that. For seeing me. Julian stood, leaving cash on the table for his coffee and a tip that was probably 3 times what the bill cost. Take care of yourself, Iris. And that little girl of yours. I will. He picked up the folded note she'd written, slipped it into his pocket. I'll keep this, if that's okay. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. And then he was walking toward the door, briefcase in hand, just another businessman starting his day. But Iris knew better now, knew that underneath the expensive suit was someone who understood, who remembered, who cared enough to do something about it. She sat in the booth for another minute, staring at the business card, letting herself feel the enormity of what had just happened. This wasn't a fairy tale. Julian hadn't swept in to rescue her or solve all her problems. He'd given her something better. He'd given her dignity, validation, and a lifeline for when she needed it most. You okay? Davies appeared at the table, looking awkward. Yeah. Iris tucked the card carefully into her apron pocket. I'm okay. The breakfast rush started 20 minutes later. The usual chaos of orders and coffee refills and demanding customers. But Iris moved through it differently today. Her shoulders were straighter. Her voice was steadier. When a customer snapped at her for forgetting extra cream, she didn't crumble. She apologized, fixed it, and moved on. Because she knew now, knew she wasn't invisible, wasn't worthless, wasn't alone. At 3 o'clock, her shift ended. She clocked out, grabbed her purse, and stepped into the afternoon sunlight. The business card was still in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, reading the name again. Julian Hawthorne, a stranger who'd become something more. Not a savior, not a hero from a movie, just a human being who'd seen another human being struggling and had decided that mattered. Iris's phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. The glasses appointment had gone well. The new prescription was ready. The cost was listed at the bottom of the message, and for the first time, Iris looked at the number without her stomach dropping. She had the money now. Between the raise and the extra hours she'd been able to work without collapsing from exhaustion, she could cover it. Barely, but she could. She texted back a thumbs up and slipped the phone into her purse alongside Julian's business card. Maybe she'd never call that number. Maybe she'd never need to. Or maybe someday, when things got impossible again, because life always made sure of that. Maybe she'd have the courage to reach out. But for now, just knowing she could was enough. Iris walked to her car, got in, and sat for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel. She thought about Julian at her age, fighting the same battles, feeling the same hopelessness. And she thought about him now, successful and secure, but still showing up at a diner to make sure people like her were treated with respect. Maybe that'll be her someday. Maybe in 20 years, she'd be the one with the power to make things better, to stand up for someone else who was struggling, to pass along the kindness that had been shown to her. Or maybe not. Maybe she'd still be waiting tables, still scraping by, still fighting just to keep her head above water. But either way, she'd remember this. Remember that she'd been seen, that she'd mattered to someone, that on one ordinary Tuesday, A stranger had looked at her pain and had decided to do something about it. And that was worth holding on to. Iris started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward Lily's school. The afternoon sun was warm through the windshield. Her daughter would be waiting, full of stories about her day. And tonight, they'd go pick up those new glasses together. Maybe stop for ice cream again. Maybe just go home and make dinner and watch a movie. Simple things, small things, but hers. And for today, that was everything. The greatest power we have isn't money or status. It's the choice to see someone struggle and decide it matters. Julian never forgot where he came from, and that memory became Iris's lifeline when she needed it most. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is remind someone that their pain is real, their fight is valid, and they're not invisible, because dignity costs nothing to give, but it can change everything for the person receiving it.